Greetings, demigods, monsters, and gods alike. I have a really exciting video for you today. A little bit different, but definitely interesting. But the best part is, I have a very special guest, that PJO guy.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm really excited to be on so we can be doing this video for today.
Yes, and what are we doing today? We will be discussing Percy Jackson hot takes. So, we've come up with a couple ourselves that we'll be going into, and then I had you guys submit some that we'll be discussing and looking at and seeing what your guys' hot takes are. So buckle in, I'm sure this will be quite the interesting video. So would you like to go first with your first hot take?
You know what? Sure. Let's see. My first hot take. Okay. We got here is Heroes of Olympus is the best out of all the Rick Riordan series.
All right. Good start.
So you go first. You could talk first. What do you think?
From a fan standpoint, I 100% agree with you. Heroes of Olympus is my favorite of the series. However, when we get to my first hot take, I'm going to argue that I don't think it's necessarily the best written series.
Perfect. Oh, yeah.
But why do you think it's the best?
Okay, so that's a very interesting question. Okay, so Heroes of Olympus is the best Rick Riordan series. You know, I think I wrote some of these in more of like I don't agree with all of them, more just like, I think this would be fun to answer. I guess I honestly kind of agree with your statement. I think it's my favorite series, but necessarily the best. I mean, it's like, what do you really classify as the best? I don't know. It's hard to say what the best is. I don't think it is the best. I think the best is Percy Jackson and the Olympians, just because it's like the series that started it all, and it's like, you know, it's so well made. Even if it's like, even if there's things in the other series that I like more or whatever, I can't deny just how incredible Percy Jackson is and how big of an impact it was on pop culture. It's hard to dislike Percy Jackson, right? So Heroes of Olympus is definitely my favorite for many, many reasons, but I wouldn't say it's the best. Yeah.
The thing is, like, we wouldn't have Heroes of Olympus or we wouldn't have Trials of Apollo if we didn't have Percy Jackson first, and if it wasn't as successful and well loved as it was, you know? So it's kind of hard to live up to that.
Exactly, yes, exactly. It's perfectly said, actually.
I will say, though, I do think Heroes of Olympus is the most fun of the series.
Yes, okay.
And what I mean by that is I think it's the most, like, there's the most action in it. Like, there is not one section of that series where there's not something going on or there's not a new life-threatening thing. Like, there's always a combination of some part of the Heroes of Seven trying to solve some sort of mystery. So, like, each chapter is a new journey, which I think is one of the reasons I love it so much.
Yes, it's never boring, I find, right? Even if there's like moments where it's like not as quality as like for Percy Jackson, I'd say, but even if that's the case, I'm still just having a blast with it. Like, it never gets boring.
100%. All right.
So that was good. I like that one. That was a good start.
Good start. All right, I'm going to follow up with that. And I'm going to say the Trials of Apollo is the best written series of Rick Riordan.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so you want me to start with this one?
Yeah, you give me your first impressions.
Okay, so I'm gonna start off with, yes, I absolutely agree with that. It is his best written series. Trials of Apollo really was a step up in quality of writing, and I think it's a very interesting conversation. Like, I can go a long time with it because, I mean, I feel like different people have, or everybody has a different taste in writing, and people think like certain things when it comes to certain writing, whatever. But in terms of just like technique and how things were set up and just how the characters are just very in detail and three-dimensional, and I don't know, everybody feels like a real person, if that sounds, if that makes sense. Like, they feel like they are real, and that's just because he did such a good job of making them fleshed out. And I don't know, you can really tell that the author, Rick Riordan, he got really good with these characters. He's very comfortable with them now, and he just knows this world so well. So yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree that it is the best, like, strictly written series out of all in the list.
Yeah. So I think, I mean,
what's your thoughts?
As an author, as an artist, as anything, the more you do something, the better you're going to get at it. I mean, it's just like the way of life. Like, the more you practice it, the better you get. And I think by the time Trials of Apollo, like, came around, like, as you said, he knows this world impeccably. He knows these characters. He's lived in it. And I think just the themes and the characters that he introduces throughout the series is not something he had done before. And I think watching the character development just as, like, Apollo as a character was something, like, truly inspiring to read about. But then at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily say it is the best series, because there are slow moments of it, and there are parts of this series that can get a little slow and boring. But just speaking from, like, a technical written standpoint, I would say it's the best.
Perfect. Okay, this is great so far. I thought we were not at each other's throats. This is fun. Fantastic.
Fantastic. I'm glad. Yeah. It's not a death battle yet. No blood has been drawn.
Okay, so then I guess I'll get another one of mine. What's another good one I could do? Ooh, I kind of like this one. I'm very curious. Okay, so here's a little bit of an interesting one. Hot take. Clarisse should have died in The Last Olympian.
Ooh.
What's your thoughts?
I had never thought about that before. I never was like, oh yeah, Clarisse should have died. But I can see where you're coming from. I don't know if she necessarily should have died. What impact do you think her dying would have had?
Okay, so perfect. This is a good one. I like this one. So I got you stumped a little bit.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah, a little bit.
So, this is just a hot take. Like, it's not what I think should take place. It's more just like a very interesting question. But this one I actually do think should happen. So this is a fun one. I think that Clarisse dying in The Last Olympian just makes more sense for the story, in my opinion, for a few things. Number one, she is not really that, at least I find, she's not really that important in Heroes of Olympus or Trials of Apollo. She doesn't really come back. She is just kind of like there. Like, she's in one scene, I believe, in Heroes of Olympus, and then not at all in Trials of Apollo. Just like a few passing mentions of her. So she doesn't really add anything going forward with the story. And the second thing, I feel that if it was done in the way where she was killed off, maybe alongside Selena or somewhere down the line in that story in Last Olympian, I think it just would have been so poetic, because it's like Selena died, and then like she had connections with Selena, and then that would immediately make you kind of care for her death, and then Clarisse dying just would have added like the cherry on top with that. Like, it would have been pretty damn sad, but I kind of would have liked that, since Clarisse in the Percy Jackson series is this character that you kind of hate in the beginning. Then you start to like develop to like her, and she has like a personality, and she like, you know, like she has this relationship with Selena and then Chris, and it's like she's just becomes more and more impactful, and she actually becomes like Percy's friend by the end of it. So like, I feel like it's almost a similar situation to spoiler warning to Burning Maze, but to Jason Grace, where like his death meant so much to the story, because like he was this character that was built up and built up and built up to be more and more likable, and then by the book where he's like the most likable, and they just axed him off, and it really hurts, and it made a huge impact in the story. So that's my take on that.
Okay, yeah. No, I 100% agree with everything you said, and then like just kind of going off what you said, it made me think like, so yeah, Clarisse is this character that we really hate in the beginning, and who one could argue is very selfish, and then to have her maybe die at the end, a completely selfless act, I think would have completed her arc maybe a little bit more, and it would have been a little more fulfilling to have this character that you watch develop then die, unlike spoiler warning, Ethan. Like, we were introduced to Ethan, we knew Ethan a little bit, but his death didn't affect me that much because I didn't have a lot of connection to him, where I think Clarisse definitely would have had a bigger impact.
Yeah, exactly. I that's what I think, and I hope that the people that like Clarisse and, you know, don't come after me, please. I like their character. It's not like I want her to be killed. It's just like, you know, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, what it would have done for the story, it would have been more meaningful. Yeah, no, I get it.
And I'm just saying, like, you know, the TV show, you know, they're making some changes. Like, hey, you know,
they are making some changes. Yeah, who knows?
Something to think about.
Maybe they give Clarisse a bigger part. You know, they're kind of giving certain characters more to do, like Poseidon and Sally. So maybe we get to see Clarisse a little more, and then they just absolutely gut us by killing her.
Oh, I would love that. I mean, that would suck. Oh no.
Especially to watch it. Oh my god. All right, interesting. All right, so I'm gonna again build off of that. Okay, I'm gonna throw it out again. Spoiler warning for the Burning Maze. I think Jason Grace needed to die. I've seen a lot of people say that like Piper should have died instead, like Frank should have died instead. I don't think it would have had the impact on the fandom that it's had if it wasn't Jason.
Okay, that's a good one. I like this one.
Thank
okay.
you. I mean, I love Jason. I will defend Jason like to the day I die. I think he gets way too much hate, but I think his death did too many good things for the series.
Right. I think I kind of alluded to it with the last question, but I genuinely pretty much agree with that statement that, yeah, I think Jason dying was a very positive thing for his character, as messed up as that sounds, because, like, you know, especially in the way how he dies, oh brother. But it was very brutal. But I'll first talk about it in like a story aspect. Like I was kind of saying before, like he's a character that you kind of build up as like a almost unsure, like he's like this mirror to Percy kind of character, and you're kind of unsure of what to think of him. Even the other characters are kind of unsure. Percy's unsure, Annabeth is unsure, Frank and Hazel. I mean, Frank hadn't even known him because he wasn't at Camp Jupiter when Jason was there, so it's like he doesn't even know the guy. Nico barely knew him until, like, you know, they bonded, which was a great scene. Yeah, like there was so much building up this character, and everybody's like unsure of him, and then I feel like he had like a really good ending in like Blood of Olympus, where he became this kind of priest-like figure to help build temples for the gods, and he got his ending with Piper and everything, and that was all nice and fine and dandy. But it's not even just the death, I feel like, that did it for me. It was also the fact that, like, I like the direction they went with him after in Trials of Apollo, how he broke up with Piper, and I, as messed up as that sounds, like I like that because, you know, it's a little bit more realistic. Like, it's not like I wasn't rooting for the relationship, but it was kind of clear to me, even when I was reading it, I'm like, yeah, I don't really know if these two can be or should like be together. It's just it not that it was rushed, but it's just like, and not that I didn't like it, it's just like,
yeah,
you know, it's hard to explain, but it didn't have the same weight or impact as like other relationships or whatever in the franchise. Yeah, I think that was a good thing, and I think that killing him off not only kind of like brought him back full circle as this character who's like reliable and like the golden boy, and like he's always there to help people no matter what. Like he's like the definition of good. Seeing the definition of good be killed off in such a brutal way is just, it raised the stakes so much, and I think it like really brought a lot of people back to this story. because I remember even seeing a lot of people saying they didn't like Jason's character, and but as soon as like this scene happens in this story, the way how it unfolded and like his death and everything, they kind of came back around on his character, and it's a hard thing to do that in any story. So yeah, I definitely think it was a positive thing that they killed off Jason Grace. Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better myself. You hit the nail on the head, or this spear through the back.
Oh, yo.
Too soon. Yeah, I mean, it's just not essentially redeeming his character, but I guess redeeming his character with the fan base, you know, making people fall in love with him and then tearing him away is such like an impactful moment and very gutsy for like Rick Riordan to do. He had not killed a main character up until that point. Being a hero, like, it's not fun, it's not safe. People die and people make sacrifices, and that's the world that these kids essentially live in. And I think that's why it resonates so much with the audience.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think, like you were saying, yeah, the fans is, like you said, I think the fan feedback is very important in these stories, and like with Jason, it's just a perfect example. Like, you see the feedback, and it's like, oh yeah, generally most people like that, despite how terrible the death was. It's good. We both agree on that, so perfect.
All right, moving on.
All right, we'll do this one. That's a pretty good one to do. Okay, so we'll do Tyson is an underrated character.
Yes. Yes, he is. 100% agree. I wanted more Tyson because like he is introduced in the Sea of Monsters and like he is this lovable goofball you just want to know more about, and like you just want to reach out and give him a hug. And then by the end of the Sea of Monsters, he's really come into his own, like, confidence wise. And like when he stands up to Polyphemus, he's like, you're a bad Cyclops, I'm a good Cyclops. Like, I just love that moment for him because like he had been bullied like all his life, like, and he didn't stand up for himself, and then he's finally standing up for himself, and then like he just disappears for the Titan's curse, and then he comes back in the Battle of the Labyrinth. And I think again, like with Biaris and showing him like you still can be a hero, I think every time Tyson is on the page, he impacts someone. Like he moves the story forward emotionally. And then I wanted more of him in Heroes of Olympus, and I love that like he came back in Trials of Apollo, but I wanted more of his story. So I think in general, Tyson is not appreciated enough for what he gave us emotionally within the stories.
Absolutely. There you go. That's a perfect way to describe it.
Thank you. I hope that made sense. That was a lot of thoughts coming in at once.
No, I put you on the spot with that one. You got knocked right out of the park.
All right.
If I were to build upon that a little bit, I think Tyson is a character that had an unfortunate lifespan of a character, because everybody, like, okay, like in the books, I think like he's great and everything, and I'll touch more on that in a second, but he has the movie version of him that people generally know him for, and that is a horrible representation of who Tyson is. And yeah, they really messed him up in that one, and most people just don't really consider him that as a character because of that movie. In terms of the books, yeah, I still think he's even like an underrated character. Like, there's a lot of other characters that get introduced in Titan's Curse, like Nico or Talia, and they're just more appreciated. And well, even like Zoe, I feel might have a little bit more remembrance, than Tyson. And I think, like, I kind of get it, but at the same time, I don't understand it, because Tyson is in my opinion part of like this 4 squad they have going on, right? They have like Percy, Annabeth, Grover, and Tyson. And I know like Tyson usually gets left out of it because he's not part of the first book and whatever, but like I feel like in Battle of the Labyrinth, he really like did a good job like bringing him in with everybody else. And his arc at the end of Last Olympian was fantastic, being the leader of the Cyclopses and coming into his own. Like, people don't see him as part of this big group and this big squad. And I like that we're getting the Percy Jackson show season 2 very soon. And Tyson's going to be a big part of that season. So I hope that this season does a good job with him and that people can appreciate his character a lot more, because he's a fantastic character that has a great arc. So, yeah.
And you know, like what you said, like, I hope the season gets him right, just because, like, he was done so wrong in the Sea of Monsters movie. So this is kind of like their second chance to bring more fans to his side and show him in a better light, for sure.
Perfect.
Are you ready to move on to some fan submissions?
No.
Okay. We're going to go right in then. All right, we'll start off kind of easy. This is from Stray31. I think it's stupid how Luke thinks of Annabeth as a little sister until he's about to die. Then he switches his thoughts. That's kind of just pathetic on Luke's part.
Sorry, okay, so he doesn't like that Luke likes...
Correct,
okay.
yeah.
You go first,
All right, I'll go first. What I think they're getting at is, like, throughout the entirety of the books, Luke does not show any romantic interest in Annabeth, like, at all. Like, yes, Annabeth has her crush on Luke, but it's very one-sided, and it's very, like, schoolgirl kind of crush, like you're crushing on the upperclassmen, but there's really no hope of it ever happening. And then all of a sudden, Luke's on his deathbed, and he's like, do you love me? Because I love you. Like, where the heck did that come from? Like, I kind of agree. Like, I think it's a little weird.
Oh, okay, I got you. The moment where he's like, did you love me? Right. Okay, yeah. I do actually have some thoughts about this. I do also agree it is very strange that happened, because, I mean, I think I understand what the purpose was and what he was trying to go for, Rick Riordan. Like, I guess he wanted to have a, what's it called? Like a relationship triangle between Percy, Annabeth, and Luke, and have that kind of drama. But it's definitely one of his worst written romance, whatevers you want to call it, in his series, because he usually does a really good job with romance, but I'd say for that was very lacking, just because there was no setup and there was nothing. But beyond just the writing of it, like, just the idea that, like, how old was he? Like 21-year-old Luke?
Yeah, I think he was like
in love
21 when he died, and she's like 16.
21-year-old Luke was in love with like 16, 15-year-old Annabeth. You know, it's just like, no, right? But I do think that everybody kind of knows this, because even in the show, I've noticed that wasn't present at all in Luke's character. Like, they very much, like, I didn't see a hint of that.
Yeah.
And even I think the cast of the show, they were talking about it, and they're like, yo, it's kind of weird. Even the cast were like, what's this?
Yeah.
So
they're like, I want no part of it.
I don't think this will be an inclusion in the show, so, and I don't think anybody's gonna really complain about that. So yeah, you know, it happened and we keep it in the past. But
we keep it in the past, we move forward.
We move forward.
And I just building on the show thing, I think it is definitely something they are going to steer away from, like you said, completely. I think including Annabeth in that final scene with Luke and Percy, where it's revealed that, like, Luke was the lightning thief, I think that's going to cement more in Annabeth's head, like, okay, Luke is the villain. Because in the book, she didn't witness that. So she always kind of had these doubts, like, is Luke a bad guy? He's still my friend, like, he saved me, like, going back and forth. So I think in that scene, they're showing us, like, no, we're gonna go a different direction with it. All right, so since we were talking about the show, I'll read this one next. I really do not like the show. It's just pretty boring. And that was from Olives Are Healthy 2042.
That's a fun one. I like that.
That's a fun one. That's a hot one.
Okay, so the show is boring. Yeah, I mean, I'll first start this off by saying, I think, yeah, if you find the show boring, that's completely okay. Like, not everybody needs to, like the show and all that. And I absolutely agree with a lot of the stuff that are said about, like, the pacing or even the exposition stuff. Like, there's definitely things in the show that could be improved, and there is times where it slows down, and it's like, you just wish it would have been done a little bit differently or sped up a little bit, in my opinion. But, yeah, like, it's definitely, you can definitely have your opinion that the show is boring. I'm not going to argue with that. But if I were to give my opinion on it, no, I personally loved the show. I think it was very fun, and I did not find it that boring. There's so many moments from the books that just came to life, and that was so meaningful to me and so special to me. And even if the moments were, like, changed a little bit or whatever, they still had the same spirit of the book, and like, I just didn't have a lot of problems that I've heard of other people say. Like, when they say it's boring, it's like, I understand, but I didn't, so I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree with everything you said. You know, you are never going to please everyone. Like, it's just not the way the world works. Like, people have their preferences, and some people are going to like things, and some people are not going to like things. And I can agree with what you said. I think the show had some pacing issues. I think the action scenes needed to be longer. Just the one that comes to my mind is the Chimera archway scene. I think that was like, it was like 2 sword swings, and then like he's dangling out of the archway. I wanted more from that. So I can understand from that standpoint how one could find the show boring. And then my biggest issue with the show is they walk into every situation and they instantly know what the monster is or what the problem is. He's like, oh, you're Krusty the Stretcher. Oh, you're Medusa. Oh, you're this. I want them to figure it out in the show. I think that was one of the funnest parts of the books, was them basically being detectives and trying to figure out, oh, what Greek myth does this apply to? How do we solve this and get ourselves out of here safely? So moving forward, I hope they fix the pacing, they fix the exposition for season 2. But I loved season 1. I mean, I have waited so long for like a faithful adaptation that like I'm not going to complain. Like, watching Percy, Annabeth, and Grover be brought to life every week on my screen, like, just brought a smile to my face. So like, if I'm smiling throughout it, like, and I'm having a good time, I think it's a good show.
Perfectly well said. That was fantastic, actually. Yeah.
Thank you. This is from Little Fox Books. Percabeth is abusive in Heroes of Olympus. Seaweed brain is an insult, full stop. Judo flipping someone isn't romantic. It is physical abuse. Annabeth is extremely catty and vindictive. People trying to justify their relationship and call it romantic would call it abuse if Percy did any of this to Annabeth.
Wow. Oh, wow. That's a spicy... Wow, okay.
Yeah, that was my reaction when I read it.
Damn. Okay, your viewers really didn't hold back. I respect that. Okay. Shoot. Would you like me to start, or do you think you got it under wraps?
I'll try and start. I'm gonna give my first impressions with it.
Okay, perfect.
I can understand where they're coming from. I'm gonna start with the seaweed brain is an insult comment. I think typically, yes, you call someone seaweed brain, that would be taken as an insult. However, people have strange pet names for their friends or their romantic interests and how they show affection. I don't think Annabeth is saying seaweed brain from any place of malice within herself. I truly think she means it as like, you are like my seaweed brain. Like, it's just what she calls him. Like, she never says it in a derogatory term, like putting him down. It's just like, oh, seaweed brain, like you did it again. Judo flipping someone, I think typically, yes, in real life, you wouldn't do that. However, these are fantasy stories and they are demigods, so they are more like, they're more physically inclined than mortals. Like, they have higher durability, they have higher stamina, they have higher strength. So flipping someone is not the same as flipping someone in real life. And I think that's kind of where we need to remember and draw the line. Like, these stories are not set in a realistic settings. They are set in a fantasy world. Annabeth is extremely catty and vindictive. I don't know if I agree with that. I can't really think of a time in the stories where she was like vindictive.
Like seeking revenge.
Yeah. I don't think that's who she is.
I would need to see an example.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and I think this is just kind of the relationship that they have. And every relationship has places to improve upon and to grow. I wouldn't call Percabeth abusive, in my opinion.
I mean, I'll just like say kind of like what is on my head, because I've genuinely never thought of this before, right? I've never like thought of their relationship as like toxic. So this is like completely new to me, but I mean, I'll just say what's on my head. Like, I mean, like I said, I've never thought of them as like a abusive or whatever relationship. I mean, you kind of said it pretty well, but with the name calling for them, I mean, yeah, I've seen people in my real life who, you know, they'll call each other nicknames and it's not really out of disrespect or out of malice or whatever. It's just as like a tease or like as a joke. Or I do think that I do remember that in Lightning Thief, I think Seaweed Brain was originally used as like an insult for Percy, but that made sense because Annabeth did not like Percy in that book. But Seaweed Brain now has become more of like a growing word for them. It's like a thing that was a rude term to Percy, but now has become a flirty kind of, whatever you want to call it, flirty nickname for Percy. And I mean, likewise, Percy calls Annabeth Wise Girl, so they're both guilty in those contexts, right?
Yeah, this is true.
They both have little nicknames for each other, but I don't think the nickname calling is genuinely a bad thing. Same thing for like the judo flip. I mean, like you said it perfectly. Like it's a story, right? It's like it's not meant to be taken so literally. But even if you did, it's like you got to remember these characters are like soldiers on a battlefield, and like they're constantly faced with death all the time. And Percy and Annabeth specifically have been through like so much from like the first 5 books. And so it's like a little judo flip is like nothing to these characters. It's like they've been through so much fights and battles, and they've literally sacrificed themselves for each other on multiple occasions. You can see like, it was more of just like a creative way to kind of bring Annabeth back to Percy after, I mean, literally like she left him for like how many months? Like pretty kind of justified in my opinion. And then vindictive. Yeah, I guess I'm very curious about that one. I would need to see an example, because I guess vindictive is like when you want to have a revenge or feel like you like some sort of revenge towards somebody. I feel like Percy was more like that with the Goddess of Misery, when he's like, yo, I'm gonna choke you out.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I don't know about Annabeth though. I would definitely need to see like an example, because I don't remember every specific detail of her. But it's an interesting point. I would love like a further comment on this.
Agreed. Yeah, I think I need more information before I can make a full informed decision. But I would say Percabeth is not abusive.
I would agree. Percabeth is not abusive. Ooh, that was a big one. Sorry.
That was a big one. I know.
Man, holy smokes.
This is from Just Me Myra. Percy needs to work on his personality. Don't come at me. Because he choked 13-year-old Nico, who was tricked by his father. Nico could have left it him, but then Percy ghosted a child who just needed help. Then he also ghosted Bob, and forgot him as soon as he got out of Tartarus, and has been an overall jerk to a lot of people, including Leo.
Okay, that's a very interesting question. So basically the comments saying just like Percy might not be the
hero
that we all think he is.
Yeah.
It's I'll break this down. So the choking Nico thing. I mean, yeah, it was a little bit I guess it's a little bit much, but it's also like you have to understand the context of that scene. It's like he was thrown in the jail in the underworld, and presumably he was going to be left down there forever. And then when Nico freed him, he thought like he betrayed him and tricked him and like thought he was just like using him or whatever. So at that moment, it's like Nico really wasn't the guy to trust, or it seemed like the guy to trust, because Nico was acting very shady, and we find out later why he was very shady. But in the very early stages, through Percy's perspective, it's kind of understandable why he'd get pissed off at Nico, because he was like shunning him out of a lot of stuff. And okay, the Bob thing, I mean, he wanted to help Bob, right? Like he left, he was like, literally, I'm gonna stay behind Bob, I won't let you do it. But it was basically everybody else forcing him to be like, no, like you have to go up there and save the world, Percy, like the world needs you. And Bob was like always like telling him like, no, it's okay. Like Percy's fatal flaw is loyalty, so like he was going to do that no matter what. But it's just the people around him that supported him in making that decision. So I don't think it was genuinely just Percy's decision for him to leave. It was also the responsibility of Annabeth, of Bob, of all the people that were telling him no, because he wanted to stay behind. Like if they didn't tell him, he was going to stay behind. So it's a good analysis of that scene, because I really love that scene. It's one of my favorite parts in the story. It's a great moment. But I personally liked it for that reason, because Percy is just very consistent there. And then the last thing I think about being a jerk to Leo.
Yeah. Overall jerk to a lot of people, including Leo.
Okay, so I guess with Leo, yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is like he first met Leo and barely knew anything about him. And then the guy like rains down hell on the camp. And it's like, yeah, it's not his fault. But like he never really had a strong connection or made an attempt to have a strong connection with Leo during Heroes of Olympus, which I think he definitely should have. But I mean, at the same time, it's like Percy's not really perfect, right? Has a lot of anger issues, and you know, that's something that does come up a lot in the story. He's just like not perfect. He doesn't always make the right decisions, and should he have befriended Leo and like apologized or something after to him? Like maybe, but like they did end up having a little moment together in the Blood of Olympus, where I remember like they were talking with each other, and they were able to bond over like Calypso and bond over like their humor and everything, and that really sold it for me. It was like that little moment where they kind of broke the ice, and I remember even in like Trials of Apollo, like they were just so buddy. Like I really just wanted more of them, because they became such good friends in that book, and it was great. So it's another example of just like Percy is kind of a flawed character with his anger issues and everything, but I think it all worked out in the end with Leo, where they became good friends after. Yeah,
100% agree. Like I couldn't have said any of that better myself. And I mean, the fact that Percy is this flawed hero and that he's not perfect, I think that's why so many people can relate to him and why he's had such an impact. Because people can see like those flaws in themselves. Percy has these anger issues, but yet somehow he still always seems to make the right decision. So that shows you like, hey, I suffer from these same issues, but if Percy can do it, I can do it. Which I think is one of the brilliance of him as a character. And then, you know, like you said, the Nico thing, you have to put yourself in Percy's shoes. Like, also, he was 15 at the time. What 15-year-old makes good life decisions? Like, none of them. And then Bob, like you said, he did not want to leave Bob. He was forced to leave Bob. It was consistent with his character. And then I think he truly believed like Bob was gone, like Bob was dead afterwards, which is why I don't think he thought about Bob afterwards. So I don't think we can really hold that against him. And then again, like you said, like he's introduced to Leo, and then Leo bombs Camp Jupiter. Like he didn't know it wasn't his fault. And then, like you said, they make up. They kind of have like this really funny moment. Like one of my favorite lines in the books is, I forget exactly what the context of the scene was or what they were trying to do. It's been a while since I've read Blood of Olympus, but he's like, I'm a Leo. And Leo's like, no, I'm a Leo, silly, you're a Percy.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's a top 10 line, yeah.
I love that line. And I think what's even more, I think Percy was more annoyed with it that like he didn't come up with it first, because it is like, it's both their humors. Like they share the same sarcastic humor, which I think is great. I think, yes, Percy makes mistakes, but I think he makes up for them.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's perfect. I mean, like, man, with all, it's kind of funny because like I was going into this video and I was like, hot takes. Okay, so like, I don't know, like questions like Sea of Monsters is like the best book or something. Like, I was like cute, fun questions. Oh my lord, these are tough. These are real tough questions. I appreciate them though. They're great. They're really good questions. I just was not expecting this. This is fantastic.
I agree. That's when I was reading them, I was like, wow, these are some really good thought-provoking questions. We're gonna do one more and we're gonna end on this one. This is from The Best One High 34. And their hot take in 4 words was, end Percy Jackson series. And then I asked them to clarify, because I said, do you mean like end everything or just end Percy's story? They said they weren't entirely sure. I don't mind if Rick wants to continue doing other stories that take place in the same universe as Percy Jackson that are non-Greek mythology, such as making a Jason and Raina backstory or a Jason and Raina backstory spin-off, which would obviously reference Roman mythology. However, I feel for me personally, for the series as a whole, including Percy, it's getting a bit too watered down, such as Marvel and Star Wars, and I think it should end now before it becomes oversaturated.
Okay. I actually really like this question. This is a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, so end Percy Jackson series. This is a very complex question, so I'm gonna go a little bit ranty here, but I agree with the idea that the Percy Jackson series is done. When the Percy Jackson Chalice of the Gods came out, I was really happy. Like I was really happy that we were getting another Percy story, and you know, especially even when I read it, I was like, this is really good, and I'm excited for more books from, you know, like we're getting 2 other books about Percy, Annabeth, and Grover going on like a little quest, and I'm very excited for those and all that stuff. I do think for me it is a little bit, what's the word, like it's tough to call that book Percy Jackson 6 because it's not really Percy Jackson 6, because technically Percy Jackson 6 is the Lost Hero, because that happens right after Percy Jackson, and Chalice of the Gods does not. So I've always been kind of, at least I get why he called it Percy Jackson, the Olympians, Chalice of the Gods, because of like marketing and all that. But it does make it kind of confusing for newer people coming into this series to really understand where to start and where to end with this franchise. Not to say that the quality of the books aren't that good. Like I was saying, I like what we already got, and I like or given, and I like that we still keep getting stories. I love all this stuff. For me, if I were to, I would say I disagree in stopping the series, or like at least creating books, because I think there's so many great characters. Like Rick does a very good job with, I think one of the best things he does is his characters, and there's so much untapped potential with many of these stories and their characters. Like I think like a Raina story would be pretty cool for a short story, or even like it's like maybe a Kane Chronicles one, or like jumping back into these old stories. Like I would love to see some of these things come back, and I'm really happy that we're getting more Percy Jackson stuff right now. But I do agree with the idea that after the 3-book series, we should focus less on, not to say that we can't have Percy back, but no more Percy Jackson stories, because Percy Jackson has had his 5-book incredible series, and he's getting 3 extra books right now, which are, you know, hopefully the other 2 are good, but the first one's good. If I were to get more stuff, I'd want it to be continuing the story forward, like, because even this story doesn't even really continue the story. Like it's more or less in between Heroes of Olympus and Trials of Apollo, which is fine, but it doesn't really tell me what happens after Trials of Apollo. It doesn't tell me what's going on with my characters after everything. It's kind of in a weird middle where we already know Percy's going to school. We already know he graduated, but the book series is about him graduating. So it's like, it's kind of the same thing how you look at like Star Wars, The Clone Wars, where you know that Anakin's going to become Darth Vader, but you're more or less just enjoying like the series itself. So like it's how I feel about that. Like I like the Clone Wars, and I like the little story that we got and all the little things that we're getting in between. But with Percy Jackson, I like The Sun and the Star because it continued the story after Trials of Apollo, and we get to see like Nico and how he's feeling after all these years, and Will, and get to expand on these characters who are genuinely really good characters that never really got a good chance in the limelight. Like Will was a perfect example of that. There wasn't really much that was focused on him until Sun and the Star. So I think my thoughts summarized with all this jumbled mess I just spouted out is I would definitely continue making books because I think Rick Riordan does a good job writing no matter what it is. So I would definitely keep writing in this universe, but I would just focus on side characters that don't really have the limelight instead of Percy Jackson, since Percy Jackson already had such a great run. I think the only time I'd want to have like Percy Jackson in a meaningful way is would be a big book, or like maybe a series of books of all the mythologies that he's written about so far combined, and like all the characters we've met, like Percy, the Heroes of Olympus cast, Magnus, the Kane Chronicles, Apollo, all these guys maybe come in like a big crossover series. That would be sick. Like a big Avengers kind of, who knows, right? I would like that because that would be like a meaningful way to bring back these characters. But yeah, that's my general thoughts. But if you disagree with that, then I would not blame you.
I don't disagree with that at all. That is 100% my take. I agree.
Perfect.
These 3 books we're getting, we never thought we were going to get them, and I like that we got them. Chalice of the Gods was a really well-written, thoughtful book. And I've always said it's a very different Percy Jackson story. Like, it's nothing like the 5 Percy Jackson books. It's more like a retrospective on the series as a whole. Like growing up with the series and like where are we now and how can we move forward but still like look fondly at the past, which was something I really liked thought-wise in the book. And I mean, if they're good, like that's a whole nother thing. But the more books you write, you're always going to run the risk like, oh, it's getting less and less interesting as it goes on. So I agree. I think Percy's story for the most part is finished. I would love to explore other characters within the universe, like how Percy popped up in Magnus Chase. Like I thought that was great. Like if he pops up in other stories, that's fine. We don't need to focus on Percy. But I do think we need at least one more book that kind of just like, I mean, I guess Percy's story is over now. We know he's at college. Like we know he's safe. He's happy. He's with Annabeth, but I would want more. I just want one book of resolution where we're like, this is where Percy's story ends. And I think if that was told in a giant crossover book with like the Kane Chronicles, Magnus Chase, Heroes of Olympus, all of that, I think that would be incredible. So that's how I want the story to go out.
Kind of like a Iron Man situation.
Yeah.
Not kill him off, but like a how it resolves his character.
100%. Like it started with Iron Man, it essentially ended with Iron Man.
Exactly, yes.
All right. Those were some interesting takes, and you had some really good insights. So thank you so much.
Oh no, you did as well. I mean, I think we agreed on a lot of the stuff, so I'm glad we did, because then it'd be a big shouting match, and that'd be fun, but
yeah, for sure. But no, I think it was good that we agreed on most of them.
Yeah, no, this was very fun.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be here and discussing these hot takes. What are your guys' thoughts on these hot takes? Let us know down in the comments below, and please try and not kill us too much. But if you submitted a hot take and you didn't see it in this video, fear not, because we have a part 2 on that PJO Guy's channel. So please go check it out, watch, leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe while you're there. You will not be disappointed. All of that PJO Guy's links will be in the comments below. So thank you guys for watching, but until next time, I'll be signing off, and please, as always, stay safe.